my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for lands afar and wide. This is my hope.
Hi, this is Marjohn Love of Marjohn's Musings, and today is June the 19th, and this is our summer show. Now, for those of you who live here on Cape Ann, lobsters are no big deal. But for a lot of our tourist friends, especially from the innermost states who've never seen a lobster before, lobsters are something they come here to enjoy. And I brought with me today an antique set of lobster tackle equipment. This looks just like a regular nutcracker, except it's got jaws of steel. This thing is like intense. And the picks are bent and pointed that come in this set. And they took the trouble to line the box in silk and use mahogany for the wood so that you could get out all the little meats in the lobster. One of the things that I found after years of fighting with them is that if you ask, sometimes the chef will take a great big meat cleaver and he'll take your lobster and whack it with the blade of the meat cleaver and split open your lobster for you. It's a lazy man's lobster, they call it. And it's kind of fun because you get to enjoy the lobster with a whole lot less work. One of the places that does that, the Boy Scouts and the VFW get together with people from the Legion, and they do a great big lobster fest down by a gazebo next to Back Beach. It's one of the highlights of the summer, and my husband and my son and I like to go there, and you get a big lobster boiled and corn on the cob and coleslaw and Twin Light sodas, which are kind of local to this area. That little bottlery is kind of on its last legs. They can't get the littler bottles anymore for the Twin Light soda. So recycling in this case is kind of imperative to keep the Twin Lights bottling company in business. I kind of like their flavors. They're not just blah stuff that you get. And they pull all the drinks out of these icy coolers, and we have what, when we were up in Newfoundland for a while, the locals would call a dirty big feed with little plastic dishes of melted butter and bibs, plastic bibs. And I always need one because otherwise I'd have butter all over my clothes. One of the things that I have been collecting for a while, this is like a special seafood fork with a knife in it so that you can cut your own crab or lobster shell. And this one is a crab fork. It's got like two tiny little tines and a big long thing so you can scoop out your crab meat. These were something that I picked up, literally it says stolen from Joe's Crab Shack down in Virginia. And it has a pry bar and a cutter. They work great. And I thought, what wonderful advertising. I haven't been to Joe's Crab Shack in years, but every time I see these, I think of Joe's Crab Shack. Hint, hint to our local purveyors of seafood. Our last show on water, I showed you my friend Charlie, and for those of you that are interested, he now has a home with a little girl, and he's a happy camper in his new home. But I brought in an old-fashioned piece of equipment. This thing was made in Des Moines, and it has this rotating wheel that is serrated, and you put the fish skin in the slot and clamp it. You have to make a little slice in the fish skin, and then you crank away, and this peels the skin off your fish. If you've never seen one of these before, almost every home up here used to have one. It's a whole lot easier than handling a slippery fish and a sharp knife. It's called a Townsend fish skinner, and it makes the difference between something that's very tasty, palatable, and easy to eat, and something you're not quite sure what to do with. I went to the Legal Seafood not too long ago and got rainbow trout, and it came with the skin on. And I don't eat fish skin. I'm sort of like, maybe not. And so I had to flip it over and take the fillet of the fish out of the skin. So one of these is nice, especially if you've got a big fish like haddock or swordfish and you're trying to get thick, tough skin off. The Townsend fish skinner. And the thing I find interesting about it is it came from Des Moines, Iowa. Odd. I also brought in for you today an antique pewter spoon. It has a tile set into it. It's a floral painting. And that got me thinking about art. About 10 years ago now, maybe a bit more, I started collecting these. They feel like glass, and I'm not sure that they aren't actually made out of glass, but they could be sort of a plasticized glass. I'm not really clear on that. But what I have here is a lighthouse and a sailboat, a cloud, the sun setting, and some seagulls. And if you look down on it and up at it, and I've examined this thing at length, it's really interesting. It's little tiny bubbles. If you hold it up to the light and you use a magnifying glass, you'll see that the artwork was made out of bubbles. And they did this on a vector that had an XY axis and a three-dimensional axis. And they set it up and lasered little pinholes into the glass. And that's how they designed these. And at the time, they were new and fascinating. Now you can pick them up really cheap at a yard sale, but at the time, they were kind of expensive. And I have the lighthouse, but I also have a harp because I play the pedal harp. And I have a lovely pedal harp, and I find it just wonderful how fine and delicate they were able to make the strings inside the glass using the power of laser and the computer to make their art. Art existed long before computers, and computers grew out of weaving. The idea of the jacquard loom, which wove beautiful patterns into fabrics, was used in the very earliest computers as punch cards. The very earliest computers ran programs based on punch cards, and when I was young and in high school, I learned how to key punch cards to run computer code. Kind of a very obsolete, unnecessary skill these days. But it gave me a ground floor understanding of the ones and zeros inside of a computer. This little guy is a fundraiser that I purchased for a group in South America that was trying to fund a maternity clinic in an area of Peru where women frequently die in childbirth because there isn't adequate medical coverage for them there. And it's a butterfly, and it uses a loomed pattern. And it has about 7 different colors in it. That's a little more than what we deal with in terms of the ones and zeros in the computer. But when I first started using a computer, it was a gray screen with grayish white light in it, and it was what was considered black and white, and you wrote in white on a darkened screen. And I can remember how excited we all were when suddenly we got 8 colors. And the mathematics inside of a computer is based on a binomial system, 2 numbers at a time, and it becomes 8, and then it becomes 256. And one day, when I was still dark of hair and slender and didn't have all the wrinkles yet, they came out with millions of colors in Apple. And that's when I switched from IBM clones to Apple computers. Over the years, I've switched back and forth a couple of times depending on what was going on politically. I've shown you my iPhone before. I turned it on day before yesterday, and I got a message that said, "Your phone hasn't been backed up in 2 weeks." That got me thinking, why do I need to back up my phone? I mean, I grew up in a household where we had a rotary dial phone. I think I showed you one. And our phone bill was $8 a month, less than the old minimum wage per month for phone service. And we were hardwired to the wall. And anyone who listened in to your phone call was doing it illegally. It was called wiretapping. It was a federal and local crime. Nowadays, every time you call someone, you hear a recording that says, "This call may be recorded for quality assurance and training purposes." My question with that was, training who for what? I mean, the idea of a backup, it sounds really logical. Let's make a backup. In this box, I have backup discs of my art and some of my music and a website I designed and some of my writing. And if you look at the discs, they're called high definition, high density discs. They're laughable. They're 800 megabytes. Not, anything that you would buy today. As a matter of fact, there aren't any computers that I know of that still read these disks. That gets to be an issue because as you get older and your work is stored on obsolete media, you can't always retrieve your work, or if you do, it's very expensive and you have to go to a professional to retrieve your media. But the backing up of the phone, you have to plug it in, lock it, and connect it to the internet. I'm still troubled by that, and I don't seem to be able to get over it. As much as I try to, the idea that someone is taking all of my photos and all of my phone conversations, and I have a toy here that I purchased for my son when he was 9 years old back in 1991. It's called Where's Waldo? And I don't know that they could market an entire series of toys like Where's Waldo anymore, because everybody would know where Waldo was. There's a global positioning device in every phone and every laptop computer. So finding out where Waldo is isn't a problem for anybody in the know who wants to find out where Waldo is. Why is that a problem? Well, blackmail, extortion, victimization. I think that when nefarious people know too much about you, they can use that information to your detriment. We had a whole discussion one day about shoes. and how I have big wide feet and I need to buy fancy shoes, and that people who have diabetes need to buy special shoes because their sensation is decreased, and that those shoes were $300 as opposed to, maybe $80 or $90 for a nice pair of regular shoes. I recently ran into a situation. You can see I'm a big girl and I'm starting to have health issues. And so my doctor told me to go and get special compression stockings. They're sort of even more intense than support hose. They're very, very tiny and they're very, very elastic. Which means that they compress your body and they'll stretch a whole lot more vertically than they will horizontally. And what that does is they make them very, very tight at the foot and the toes, and the compression gradually eases as you go up the leg. And believe it or not, you're looking at $110 worth of hose. Now, No Nonsense makes hose. This is like a regular pair of pantyhose. It's $4.99. These are sort of like those, except they're more elastic, and they've been designed to help people who have blood pressure problems that cause fluid to build up in their legs. And I thought I might show you what that's about, because it might save your life. These little knee highs are made by Mediven, and they come with a garter type band that's pretty wide, and it's sort of soft, and it's got silicone rubber so that it won't roll and tourniquet your leg, which is very painful and also dangerous. And for the summer, they make them with open toes so that you could still wear thongs or sandals. I'm not sure why they thought that was a great idea, because by the time you get these on, these are hot. But I wanted to talk to you about normal knee highs. Here's a package of No Nonsense, 10 pairs of knee highs for $5. Or if you're heavy like I am, you can buy 2 pairs of queen size knee highs for $4. Let's do the math on that. 10 pairs for $5, but if you're fat, you get 2 pairs for $4. Gee, that doesn't add up. And then if you have a cardiac condition like I do, and you need to wear compression stockings so that your feet don't become very swollen and edematous, when you go to buy your knee highs from Mediven, they're $85 a pair. And you're supposed to hand wash them, or you can wash them in the machine on delicate and cool water. But, I don't have enough money to be spending $85 a pair of socks. If you have a cardiac condition, your insurance may pay for it. My insurance paid for 2 pairs for me. And so we wash them and use a skirt hanger and hang them up to dry overnight. And if you want them actually dry in the morning, a nurse friend of mine, her name is Faith Kramer. She's in Salem, and she works near the Salem Hospital. She's 82 years old. She's been fitting people with these for 40 some odd years. She told me, you take them, wash them, put them on a towel, fold the towel over it, and sit on it. It actually works. They dry much quicker that way. And so we have these hanging in our shower. $85 knee highs instead of 10 pairs for $5. I find that disturbing because I believe that it would be possible to make these for maybe, I don't know, $5, $10 per pair. And that brings me back to a theme that I've kind of harped on quite a bit, and I'm really sorry if it's old and boring at this point, but I don't like the for-profit medical system. It disturbs me. I find the idea of looking at someone, knowing that they're disabled in some way due to a birth defect, illness, aging, car accident, you name it, and then victimizing them through extortionary prices on their equipment. Faith knew that I usher sometimes at the Shalin, the Rockport Music Center on the main street in Rockport. And she knows that I dress up to go there. And so I bought with my own money, not through insurance, an extra pair of nice black hose to wear with skirts or under trousers, because we dress in black and white so that the patrons of the Shalin will know who the ushers are as opposed to other patrons. And these are thigh highs. And I said to her, why don't I get pantyhose, like regular pantyhose? She said, no, you don't want those, because every time you went to the bathroom, you'd need to have rubber gloves. Like I told you, these are extremely tight, these hose. They're very, very tight. And you have to wear latex rubber gloves that are grippy to be able to pull them on. This particular pair of sheer and soft hose was $110. And for any of you ladies that have worn pantyhose, and it's a fading trend from what I understand from the younger ladies, I took my shoes off, walked through my kitchen, and managed to hook the bottom of the pantyhose on a little rough spot in my wooden floor and got a runner in them. I was kind of miserable. I think you saw the thigh-high bands. Those are supposed to hold the stocking up. Well, I hate to tell you, but if you're walking around in a skirt with these on, with the thigh-high silicone garters, if you're vigorous at all, they start sliding. So I went back to Faith, and she got me this roll-on, sort of like an old-fashioned roll-on deodorant. It's a roll-on of glue. It's a body glue, and you roll it on, and you put the stockings up, and then you hold them there until this glue dries. You want to talk about nasty. Like, I think getting old is like so nasty. And my husband says to me, yeah, but consider the alternative. And the reality is this stuff works pretty well. Once it's dry, those stockings aren't going anywhere in a big hurry. The problem is she didn't tell me how to get the stupid stuff off later. So I go to take these stockings down. I've been on my feet for hours, with all these patrons at the Shalin, and it was a wonderful concert. And I come home and I go to peel the stockings, and I got like a wax depilatory. It was like, and I was like, oh my goodness. There was a stripe of thigh that had no hair left. So if you ever have to use this stuff, it stays. With your compression stockings, take a warm, wet washcloth and wash down your leg before you try to remove the hose. This is a whole new learning curve for me. I feel like when I was 16 and a half years old and I got my learner's permit to get my driver's license, like taking care of a senior citizen's body, you need an instruction manual. It's a whole new thing. You eat differently, and you walk differently, and you talk differently, and your clothes are different. And You go to look at something and you need not only glasses, now you need bifocals. And don't dare go out in the sun because you're probably on a medication that'll make you burn to a crispy fry so that you look like one of my friendly little red boiled lobsters. And yet, people in my generation are experiencing maybe 10 to 15 years more longevity than our predecessors. That's quite a trade-off, isn't it? I'm already 15 years older than my mother was when she died. That's kind of an interesting thing. And one of the things that keeps me and my husband alive are CPAP machines, and we've talked about that before. Some of you know that I was a polysomnographer at the Salem Hospital Sleep Lab for 4 years. This is a CPAP mask with a headgear, and it's blue. It's got a blue industrial strength gelatin inside here and a gelatin blob that goes on your forehead. And the mask goes around your nose and you put it in place and you breathe through a hose connected to a little machine. Think like a small vacuum cleaner with its engine in backwards so that it's blowing like a leaf blower into your nose and opening your airway. And the reason that I mention that is if you need CPAP because you have apnea, they've done studies because not everybody's willing to wear a mask like this at night. And the people who do, they follow them, and the people who don't, they follow them, and they found out that for people who need to wear a CPAP mask, those that actually do it live 10 to 20 years longer than the people who need a CPAP mask because they snore so badly that they actually stop breathing at night. Every time you stop breathing while you're asleep, your blood pressure spikes. And if you stop breathing long enough, your autonomic nervous system kicks in and makes you thrash in the bed. You wake up in the morning exhausted, and part of what's going on is a physiologic response. The tongue, which is not the little pink end you see, that's not that. It's somewhere between 10 and 15 pounds of an organ that goes down your throat, and it becomes flaccid when you sleep and falls into your airway. That type of apnea is called obstructive sleep apnea, and a CPAP can help with that. Unfortunately for some of us who smoked marijuana in college and drank tequila shooters when we were young, even if we stop smoking shortly thereafter and don't drink much at all, we wind up with something called central apnea. That's a little different. That's when the diaphragm muscle doesn't even strain to make you breathe. You fall so deeply asleep that you're sort of semi-comatose and your diaphragm, which is an autonomic nervous system response, stops working. It happens in acute alcohol intoxication. It also happens when people are doing barbiturates, or if they're shooting heroin, or if they're taking certain prescription medications at high dosages. It's a central nervous system dampening situation where the diaphragm that keeps you alive by pumping the bellows of your lungs stops working. And unfortunately, I'm headed that direction. When I went in for my sleep test, I had that type of apnea. So since I'm a mouth breather, I don't get to use a little nasal mask like my husband that just fits over your nose and you can still talk out your mouth. I tend to mouth breathe, and if they did that to me and put that on me, the air would blow in my nose and right out my mouth, and so I have to wear a special one that covers both my nose and mouth, or that was the theory of the tech who took care of me. And you have to talk through here. It's miserable. And this particular headgear is very, very painful. This thing is called a Quattro Air. And one of the reasons I brought it was for the home economics demonstration. This mask is several months old, but they usually last about a year. This Quattro Air is set up so that it has an internal, I'm afraid I'm going to break this in the light. There's so much light here, it's a little hard to see. But there's an internal mechanism that releases this, and this little flimsy part is supposed to be replaced once a month. And the insurance companies balk at that, and in a way I kind of don't blame them. This mask costs maybe, I don't know, $200 or so, and it lasts 6 months to a year. This mask is like $250, and the insert that goes in here, which I would love to get out to show you. Here we go. The insert that goes in here is supposed to be replaced once a month, and they're $50 a pop. Do the math on that. It's like $600 a year for the inserts that go into the mask. And the thing's miserably uncomfortable. And I basically hated it. So because I worked as a polysomnographer, I went ahead and I got myself a full face mask, the kind that you see on television when someone's in a coma or in the emergency room and they've got their whole face covered. And the reason that I did that is this mask tends to leak at the top, and it leaked into my eyes. So think about blowing a hairdryer at your eye all night. My eyes dried and I wound up with an eye infection. So I went to the eye doctor and they dilated my eyes and they gave me these to go home. Are these fancy or what? You ready for these? These are made out of cardboard and plastic. And I mean, if this isn't a fashion statement, you know, Danny DeVito, where are you? But what they told me is, you know, you can't be using the mask with it leaking into your eyes. You can get really badly damaged eyes. So a CPAP is not like without issues or risks. One of the things that's a problem with them too is that there's a rhythm throughout the night when you sleep. And there's an old expression that talks to people who have depression and anxiety that the darkest hour is just before dawn. And they're talking about people who are so distressed that they have insomnia and they're up all night and they can't sleep and their head's full of worry and they're agitated and they can't sleep. And that hour that's somewhere between 4 and 5 o'clock at this time of year, but later as the days shorten, is the hardest one to survive. You're the most likely to act rashly between dawn and pre-dawn, that hour. It's also the time that most people engage in dreaming. They get into their REM cycle and they dream. Well, if your dreams are aggressive or violent and you're in bed with your partner could get hurt if you mistake them for someone in the dream. And so the Almighty built in to puppies and cats and everybody that when they're dreaming, they don't actually act out their dreams. But if you've ever watched your dog having a dream, you'll see them and the little feet twitching. And you can see them running. They're running in their sleep. You know, they're chasing rabbits or whatever dogs do when they dream. But you see the little faces twitching and the little feet going. And in people, they know that we're dreaming by rapid eye movement. It's called REM sleep. Rapid eye movement, REM sleep. When you're in REM sleep, that's the time when the tongue is the most flaccid. And you're most likely to have your diaphragm stop working. And if they set your CPAP, or in my case, a BiPAP, what's a BiPAP? Well, it means that as you inhale, the pressure's high. But blowing out against that is a struggle and a misery. And in the beginning, when there was only CPAP, a whole lot of people would rip the mask off their face while they were asleep and throw it on the floor. They made the exhale easier so that the computer inside the machine now knows that there's an inhale cycle and an exhale cycle. And it's set up as a bellows, an in and an out, and it's expressed as a fraction. And when I worked at the Salem Hospital, we would start people at 12 pounds per square inch of air pressure, PSI, over 8 pounds per square inch of air pressure. And so the inhale has a blast like a fan, and the exhale gives you some space. And in the beginning, it was timed, which was, tick, tock, like a clock. And people do not breathe that regularly like a ticking clock. People breathe, especially when they're dreaming, in bursts. Just like when you speak, your sentences are longer and shorter. When you're dreaming, the content of the dream affects how quickly or slowly or how deeply or shallowly you breathe. My boss, Ed Barber, who's a professor of respiratory therapy, helped invent a machine that tracked every breath you take. And if you'll think back to a show that I did on printers for computers, I talked to you about the old daisy wheel printers. Ta-da-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. And you had one font, whatever the printer came with, that was the font you had. And then later on, some smart cookie came up with the idea of using the technology for photocopying to then print off a computer. And la, we have laser printers. It was the difference between a horse-drawn carriage and a car. I mean, it was such a huge leap from a daisy printer to a laser printer that it wasn't even funny. And suddenly there were fonts, and now there's colored inkjet printers and there's colored laser printers, and we have this evolution of the printer. And the poorest guy on the block can go down to the computer store and can buy, if they've got enough cash or credit, a laser printer. Unfortunately, in the medical field, they're still starting people off on CPAPs. They're the old standard and they're cheap. They might not be what the person needs. I mean, maybe the person needs a BiPAP. But I'm not necessarily sure that they need $600 a year worth of liners for their mask. Like, some of the medical expenses are necessary. You can see, or at least you could feel if you were in the studio and I handed you these, that these are thicker and woven differently than the cheap commercial stockings. They have a great deal of stretch, and they're scientifically designed so that they conform to your legs. They have to be fit for you, because if they ride too high on the back of your knee, they can cut off the blood supply to your leg and cause more problems than they help. But for someone like myself to be able to have these stockings could save me from a heart attack. But if they're not fit properly, they could give me blood clots and cause me to die of thrombus. I could get a blood clot to my lung. The fact that medical interventions require specialized knowledge is something that everybody knows, but I'm not always sure that the specialized knowledge needs to cost as much as it does. I guess that's my thought on that one. I have here a little popple. It's perfect palm size, and it was rounded by the ocean into this little lozenge. I just love it. It's gray and it has a wonderful feel to it. And as I was talking to you about my laser artwork, you know, they shot lasers into the glass and made these little bubbles. I wanted to show you other uses of a laser. These are stones that I've collected that have sandblasting done to them. This one says believe, and this one says peace, and this one says family, and this one says love. You can kind of tell what I'm into by what sorts of stones I collected. When I was a little girl, my grandmother used to say to me, "It isn't written in stone," meaning that something had an outcome that was not necessarily assured. If you don't back up your phone, they can turn your phone off. If you don't hit I agree on some of these software contracts that say they can stop allowing you to use the software at any time at their discretion for any reason, and the product is not warranted for any purpose. There's an expression that says, the easiest way to lose power is to think that you don't have any. Where's Ma Bell? I want an American phone company. I want to be able to make a loving or angry or sexy telephone call to an intimate of mine without someone I don't know recording what I say and uploading it for who? To where? To train who? For what? If all of us said, BS, we're not doing this. We're not letting you read all our email. We're going back to postage stamps and paper. No, you may not record this conversation for training purposes. I don't know who you're training, and I don't know what you're training them for, but I don't want my conversation recorded, especially if my husband is on his 2-week leave, and I might be saying something intimate or personal to my husband. Or maybe I'm angry at my girlfriend and we're having a fight and I really don't want you to overhear it or keep a copy of it or use it in some way. I also don't want all the advertising. I don't want to be a victim of being bombarded with advertising. I don't think I'm alone in that. I mean, I'm doing a television show in a cable station because thousands of Americans got fed up with commercial television and purchased cable contracts to get away from the inundation of advertising. In a capitalist society, many of us have to work at jobs that are difficult and demanding. When I did 12-hour night shifts at the Salem Hospital Sleep Lab, when I came home, I was exhausted. But I had to commute from Salem to Rockport. So I was also keyed up. I'd been in the car, I'd been at work, and I wasn't ready to sleep immediately. Do you know the dreck that used to be on television at like 7 in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning? Just like amazing. It's not the kind of thing you could go to sleep to. Now we have pay per view and view on demand. That didn't used to exist. If you missed a show, it went by and you missed it. Now through Netflix and other programs like that, you can go back and get television series and watch the shows one after another. That didn't used to be the case. If your show came on Wednesday night and you were in choir practice on Wednesday night, you had to decide, am I going to watch my show or am I going to go to choir? Now we're lucky enough we can do both. We can pre-record the show or we can download it later. Some of the advances are wonderful and very exciting. Some of them are fascist BS, if you ask me. I think we need to take back our power as Americans and say, you know, whoever wrote the Patriot Act and shoved it through Congress in 6 weeks after 9/11, it was already prepared. How could they have gotten it together so fast? They didn't. It was pre-written. 9/11 happened and they shoved it through Congress. We need to look at that again. And I know other people have said that and people have discussed it and people have debated it. But that didn't stop the powers that be, them, they. And I don't want to be the conspiracy theory queen, but why are you recording my phone calls? Why do you have to back up the GPS of everywhere I went? Why are you following me? So-and-so wants to use your location. Allow, don't allow. Right now we have a button. Does it work? Would you know if it didn't? These aren't little small questions. They're your freedoms. Are you American? Or do you live a little bit down from Tiananmen Square? Like if people know what you're spending with your ATM card, if people know where you're going with your little GPS in your hand or in your car, if people can open your car and search it electronically because you have push-button keys, are they going to do that to your house next? I mean, they're certainly taking pictures of your selfies. You know, you're on your computer talking to your grandkids. Who's uploading your images to where? We talked a lot about water. One of the things that we talked about was the difference between salt water and fresh water. I brought in a pair of beautiful cobalt blue glass salt and pepper cellars. And anybody who's ever had silver or other metal salt and pepper cellars will note that the pepper is usually in pretty good shape, shiny and nice, and that the salt, the finishes come off. There's a movie out that if you get the chance, you should probably go and see. It's called Fed Up, and it was produced by some of the same people that helped Al Gore create An Inconvenient Truth. And it talks about the vast quantities of sugar in our processed foods. One of the things it mentions but doesn't go into much detail on is the vast quantities of sodium, salt. Not just the sodium table salt that we're used to, but different types of salts, phosphate salts, potassium salts, all different sorts of salts. Fed Up talks about all the different names for sugar. There are different names for salt too, and the reason that I mention that is if I eat salty food, my feet swell inches by tape measure, which is one of the reasons I need these. If I eat wholesome, healthy, organic foods and I don't salt them, my feet don't swell as much. They do swell some, but not as much. I find it fascinating that if I eat low salt that has sugar foods, my feet will also swell from that. And the reason that I'm mentioning all that to you is there's been a change in What's killing Americans? The number one killer there for a while was cancer. Right now, the number one killer is cardiac complications. This is a Reader's Digest book for lay people. It's not a new problem. We've known this problem for years, and yet, after watching Fed Up at the Community Theater in Gloucester, I went into Market Basket and was reading labels. One of my favorite foods had 1,280 milligrams of sodium per serving. Supposedly 3.5 servings in a box that my husband split. When you put it on a plate, it looks like 2 servings. Maybe not, you know? If you get the chance, take a look at Fed Up. And if you want to have crab, my favorite crab casserole is at Brackett's Ocean View restaurant. Mr. Brackett puts buttered breadcrumbs and sherry on top. Don't tell Weight Watchers I went there. It's delicious. It's worth the calories. The other place that might be fun to go that's local is Roy Moore's. They have lobster there. Big, fatty lobster rolls. Very tasty. Enjoy your summer. Hopefully I'll be back to talk to you again soon. If you'd like to write to me, my contact information is in the credits. My friend Stephen has been my cameraman today, and my lovely director, Becky. We work here at Cape Ann Television. Support your local cable access because it's your freedom of speech. And if you look on the web at vodcasting sites where you sit in front of your computer and the camera takes your picture and you can talk just like I am here at the studio, in the fine print it says that they can modify, distribute, or remove your show at any time at their discretion. Having public access gives you freedom of speech. It's something to think about, your freedom of speech, your privacy, your safety, and your security. I've told you that I wear a CPAP. If you wore a CPAP, would you want someone to know that you didn't know that you needed this equipment? We'll talk more about issues around pharmacy, which is a whole nother show. And I'd like to talk to you again about water in a future show. Send me some feedback. You'll see my snail mail post office box in Rockport, box 121 in Rockport. Or you can email me if you're happier doing email, knowing that whatever you write can be seen and read by who? Think about it. This is Marjohn. Love, Marjohn's Musings. Till next time.